Hi there, welcome to Pitchside, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for always checking out our content and giving us feedback about the content we put out there. We really do appreciate that. And like I keep saying, please, when you pass by Pitchside with Tabu Peter, spare 20 seconds, hit the subscription button or hit subscribe and join our big family. Let's grow this brand together. Let's try and push Ugandan football to the next level. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, the World Cup qualification campaign on the African continent at least has come to an end. 95% of that. We do know we have a playoff round that is definitely going to take center stage, but we know the 9 countries that are going to represent Uganda at the upcoming World Cup. The first one that will be expanded. 48 nations are competing for the grand prize of the FIFA World Cup trophy. This particular World Cup 2026 is set to take place in 3 different nations, which is also a first of its kind. That's USA, Mexico, and Canada. On the African continent, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Morocco, of course, who are definitely semi-finalists in the last edition, South Africa. You can also talk about, Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, some of the nations that have booked their slots at the upcoming FIFA World Cup 2026. Today on Pitchside, we want to break down the 9 African countries that have qualified for the World Cup and how they did it. And of course, also focus on the coaches who actually pushed them to that very good milestone. So we'll get started with the Pharaohs of Egypt, who are going to make their 4th appearance at the World Cup. Egypt are coached by their former captain and player, Hossam Hassan. He's a player who has made history with the Egyptian national football team. You can go back to 1990. He scored the crucial goal for Egypt when they're playing Algeria to actually book a slot to the 1990 World Cup. At that time, Egypt had not qualified for the World Cup in over 50 years. As a matter of fact, Egypt had last qualified for the World Cup in 1934. So after 1934, Hossam Hassan scored a very vital goal in the 1990 qualifiers, and of course Egypt were able to qualify for the 1990 World Cup. That was in Italy. After those 2 editions, Egypt returned to the World Cup in 2018, and they are now back to the World Cup in 2026. So you'd argue that the Pharaohs have done a very good job. In fact, Egypt in Group A, or the qualifiers came to an end in Group A, with Egypt top of that group. You look at the 10 games that they played, picked up 8 wins, 2 draws, 26 points collected, and unbeaten. So fantastic run that Egypt has put up in the qualifiers. We also need to note that their coach, Hossam Hassan, is Egypt's all-time leading goal scorer with 69 goals. Coming close in there is Mohamed Salah on 63. And of course, since Hossam Hassan came in as head coach, he was appointed after Egypt's dismal performance at the AFCON 2023. He's turned things around. 15 matches played, 10 wins, 4 draws, 1 loss. That is a very good performance from Hossam Hassan, the head coach of the Egyptian men's national football team, also known as the Pharaohs. So Egypt topped Group A, and they got the job done. Mohamed Salah scored 9 goals in the qualifiers. He was just 1 shy of being a joint top scorer in this qualifying campaign. So there you go. That's Egypt for you. They're currently coached by Hossam Hassan, an Egyptian legend who is trying to turn things around for them here and there. From there, we cross over to Senegal. We all know that Senegal made big headlines in 2002. Alhaji Diouf, Kamara, Boba Diop. We can go to Tony Silva. We can go on and on with that golden generation of Senegal and what they did when they actually went through to reach the quarterfinals, but also most famously beat France in the World Cup. So Senegal also managed to seal a ticket to the 2026 World Cup, which is going to be their 4th appearance at the Grand Tournament. First qualified in 2002, carried the African flag so high. Then, of course, they came back in 2018. Then from then, they've not stopped. They've actually done back-to-back World Cup qualification campaigns, like I've said, 2018, 2022 in Qatar, then, of course, 2026, that is going to happen in Mexico. as well as the United States of America and Canada. Now, Senegal is coached by Pape Thiaw, the man who replaced Aliou Cisse as the head coach of the Senegalese men's national football team, or the Lions of Teranga. And he's done a very good job. Ever since he came in, he guided the Senegal to the 2024 CHAN tournament. Of course, this particular edition that just ended, Senegal were nowhere near the final, so they were unable to win it. But there's been a bit of stability. There were question marks if Pape Thiaw would be able to handle the team, but I think he's done a very, very good job. He guided Senegal to the Africa Cup of Nations in, of course, Morocco, which is happening in December. You would argue that that has been a very, very good run. Now, Senegal topped Group B in their World Cup qualification campaign, got 24 points. They were just about to be pipped by DR Congo. DR Congo finishing second there. Very, very close run there from DR Congo as they try to push it there. Of course, their star man is Sadio Mane, scored 5 goals in the qualifiers. He will be expected to lead Senegal again at the 2026 FIFA World Cup tournament. But good run there from the Senegalese as they made it to the World Cup. Let's move to South Africa. Bafana finally back at the big stage. In 16 years, we all know that South Africa needed to win their final game to actually seal the deal, and they did that against Rwanda, 3-0. Hugo Bruce, the head coach, has done wonders ever since he was appointed in May 2021. Now, you look at the things that he's done and you're thinking, okay, Hugo Bruce is definitely the man supposed to be in charge of Bafana. When he was appointed, of course, he formed a team that wasn't really organized, in all sorts of ways. And he put a team together of youngsters, mixed it with experience. And ever since then, it's been working so well for him. Now, on top of leading Bafana to a third place finish at the AFCON in 2023, he's now taken them to the World Cup, first time since 2010. That's when South Africa played at the World Cup. At that time, South Africa were hosting the World Cup tournament. They did not leave the group stages, but became the first African nation to host a World Cup. But ever since then, it's been trouble and failure for Bafana. But here they are, and they did that fighting tooth and nail. They were fighting against Nigeria, but they delivered in their group, coming through to top their group on 17 points in Group C. 10 games played, 5 wins, 3 draws, 2 losses, and a total of 18 points collected. Nigeria came in second on 17 points. Unfortunate there for Nigeria, but you have to, look at people like Victor Osimhen, who of course scored 6 goals in the qualification campaign, but overall had a very, very good performance. Yeah, he was injured in a few games, and I feel like if Victor Osimhen was not injured and missed out some games, Nigeria would have a different story. But it's not all done and dusted for the Super Eagles. They're into the playoff stage, so maybe they'll work out something there and try and reach the World Cup again. But back to Bafana. Like I said, 16 years later, they are back at the World Cup. Before that, Bafana had qualified for the World Cup in 1998 for the first time. If you do remember, Benny McCarthy was the star player at that time, and from then on, he didn't look backwards. He went on to be a top forward. After the 1998 World Cup, we had the 2002 World Cup as well, where South Africa qualified, captained by Sibusiso Zuma and that generation at that time. But then, of course, after that was 2010 when they were hosting, and since then they've not gone back to the World Cup until now, where they have done a good job. So South Africa have managed to pull through, and they are at the World Cup. And just maybe to mention that the 2010 generation had Teko Modise, had Itumeleng Kune, had Siphiwe Shabalala. All those have since actually retired from the beautiful game. So the current generation is what we're looking forward to. Relobilo Mafokeng, Mohau Nkota, Talente Mbata, and all these other young players that are part of the Bafana setup. So we can only wait and see how that is definitely going to pan out. The next team that qualified for the World Cup is one that no one saw coming. Cape Verde are going to play at the World Cup in, of course, the 3 nations, USA, Mexico, and Canada. Yes, Cape Verde have a story that is so unique. We all remember them at the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast. They really put up a show. Unfortunately, they were unable to qualify for the AFCON 2025. But they've bounced back on the big stage with that performance to qualify for the World Cup. Now, look at this. Cape Verde qualifying ahead of Cameroon. That's the story that everyone is talking about. A country that doesn't have more than 600,000, people is the one that is at the World Cup today. So it's just definitely a unique story. They've trusted their coach, Bubista, who of course many thought would be fired after failing to guide Cape Verde to the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations. But, the hierarchy decided to trust him, and look at what he's delivered. He's been using most of the foreign players he has at his disposal. Cape Verde is a country that has a league of 12 teams, so there's not much you could pick from there. But for me, being able to put up such a performance and reaching the World Cup is up there. So Cape Verde, well done, and the world is waiting to see what you can do. For Cameroon, very unfortunate, the Indomitable Lions. This is a team that made the headlines in 1990 with Roger Miller and a couple of other World Cup editions. It's sad that they were unable to put up a show in their group and qualify for the World Cup. But of course, lots of lessons learned there, and Samuel Eto'o will have to work around so many things to make sure that his team, his national team, because he's the president of FECAFOOT or the FA or the Football Federation in Cameroon, he has to do a lot to make sure that team bounces back and does better. So congrats to Cape Verde. 10 games played, 7 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss, 23 points collected in this qualifying campaign. Let's move to Morocco, led by Walid Regragui, of course, who's done a very tremendous job. He was coaching the Moroccan national football team, and we know the history. They made Morocco first African nation to reach the semi-finals of the competition. They actually went on to finish 4th overall at that World Cup. They are back again. They have had a smooth campaign. 10 games played, no loss. You would argue that they've picked up a very good record. 8 wins in there, no draw, no loss. Scored goals for fun. Of course, in their group, which is Group E, Morocco managed to top that group on 24 points. And it's in the same group that Eritrea pulled out. So the mathematics started mathing across all the other groups in the qualification campaign. But here you are. 7 appearances now for Morocco at the World Cup. They first qualified for the World Cup in 1970, then went back in 1986, 1994, 1998. You also have 2018. Then you have 2022 in Qatar, where they made history, and now 2026. You would argue that Walid, the head coach, has done a very good job. I think they're on a run, unbeaten run of a couple of games in there. Ayoub El Kabi is the man who's been scoring goals for them in the qualifying campaign. 4 goals in there in 5 games. That's a very good performance in there. You have Hakim Ziyech as well, who's also played a pivotal role as an experienced player. Back in the setup after falling out with the Moroccan FA, but now of course he's back trying to make sure that he actually seals a permanent spot. So you will be seeing Morocco at the World Cup in 2026, but also at the Africa Cup of Nations in 2025, because they are the hosts, and everyone will be rooting for them to see how far they can go. They've only won one Africa Cup of Nations title in their history. So let's wait and see what the Atlas Lions can actually do for themselves. The other country that has sealed, qualification to the World Cup is Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast, coached by a massive Faye, an Ivorian. Of course, we all know what Imasi Faye has done for the Elephants. We can go back to AFCON 2023 when he led them to that title on home soil. Fantastic performance that he put up when, Ivory Coast hosted the Africa Cup of Nations. We are moving away from that now to focusing on the World Cup. They've had a very good run as well in their campaign. You look at their group and you're thinking, yeah, this is a very good performance that they've definitely put up as, Ivory Coast. 10 games played. You look at the 8 wins I've collected, 2 draws, no loss. A combined total of 26 points that they've picked up right there. But close one because Gabon was breathing right down their necks. Gabon coming in second on 25 points. Ivory Coast have qualified for the World Cup 4 times. This is going to be their fourth. First, of course, qualified for the World Cup in 2006. Then, of course, qualified in 2010 in South Africa, 2014, and now 2026. The Didier Drogba Yaya Toure generation played a very big role between 2010 and 2014. Yeah, that is the crew. Gavinho, Wilfred Bony, and all those players that were playing for the Ivorian national football team. So you'd argue that Ivory Coast have also, done well. Emassi Faye becomes the first Ivorian to qualify Ivory Coast or to help Ivory Coast qualify for a World Cup. Isn't that wonderful? Son of the soil, trying to make sure that his national team performs well. I think Emassi Faye has done a fantastic job. So there you go, Ivory Coast. The other team is Algeria, the Desert Foxes. They're in the same group with the Uganda Cranes, and they have qualified for the World Cup for a 5th time. First time 1992, they went back in 1986. They were at the World Cup in 2010 and in 2014, and then of course in 2026. The Desert Foxes in 2014 put up their best finish. They actually reached the round of 16 in that World Cup in Brazil, but beyond that, it's not been exactly a very good performance for them. So Algeria Group G, they've managed 25 points, had a very good run in that one without a doubt. You look at people like their head coach Vladimir Petkovic, who was appointed in January 2024, and he's put a team together to make sure they perform so well. Of course, players like Riyad Mahrez have played a pivotal role for them to qualify, but their main player, at least in the qualifiers, has been Mohamed Amora, who has scored 10 goals, 1 goal ahead of Mohamed Salah. So he's the top scorer in these qualifiers for what he has done. Algeria finishing ahead of the Uganda Cranes. As a matter of fact, Algeria picking up their final 3 points at home against the Uganda Cranes. The Cranes themselves have also done well in this qualification campaign. You have to go as far back to get a World Cup qualification campaign like this one that the Cranes have put up. I mean, you look at the stats, 10 games played, 6 wins, 4 losses, no draw. Car scored quite a number of goals in there. It's been a very good run. 1 games at home, 1 away, beating Botswana. You would think that Paul Put has done a very good job. And if you're Ugandan out there, maybe the focus should be on AFCON 2025. But I'm pretty sure that there's been lots of lessons learned from this whole World Cup qualifying campaign. We started it when we didn't have a home venue, because at that time Nambole hadn't been passed or endorsed to actually host games. But as time went on, Nambole was opened and we played back-to-back games. I think we lost to Algeria but beat Botswana. And the fans loved the national team again. So all the other games that we've played at home, you can clearly see that there's been too much love for the Cranes when they're playing at home. So the fans have played a pivotal role, but also there's been a lot of development. Paul Put has trusted local-based players. The foreign players that have come into the mix have also done well. Jordan Obita, Elioka Prodosi, have been doing so well. You have Tony Sibik as well, who has done well at right back. So the mixture has been very good for the Cranes. And you're thinking that going forward, first AFCON 2025, Paul Put has his team somewhat sorted out to make sure that we go out there and perform. Remember, the Cranes will be returning to the Africa Cup of Nations for the first time since 2019. They've missed a couple in between there. And when the Cranes were at the Nations Cup in 2019, they actually reached the round of 16. So the target should be higher. Maybe reach the quarterfinals. Maybe push yourself to go as far ahead as possible. But overall, in my opinion, I think the Cranes have had a very good World Cup qualification campaign. Tunisia is the other nation that sealed qualification to the World Cup, and they did that in style. Never mind that they have struggled at the World Cup in all the tournaments they've played in. They've never left the group stages. They've been at the World Cup in 2002, in 2006, in 2018, 2022. You also have 2026. So there you go for Tunisia. They've been at the World Cup 5 times, Tunisia. But there was a change in guard at the start of the year. They brought in Samuel Trabolsi, who, of course, had previously coached the team, I think, a couple of years ago. So he came back for a second stint, and he's done a very good job. Tunisia running through the qualification campaign unbeaten and scoring goals for fun. 10 games played, 9 wins, 1 draw, no loss, a total of 28 points collected. You want to think that was a very, very good performance. Some of their top players are Mohamed Alben Romdahani, who scored 4 goals in the campaign, and Hannibal Majebri, we all know him, product of the Manchester United youth setup. The ones who have tried to actually push Tunisia to go this far. So waiting to see what they can do. They're also at the AFCON 2025 in the same group as Uganda, Tanzania, and of course the Super Eagles of Nigeria. So that should be an exciting one. The final team that I'm going to break down for you that has gone to the World Cup, are the Black Stars of Ghana. Oh my goodness, a team that struggled to actually perform well in recent times, failed to qualify for the Africa Cup of Nations in 2025 in Morocco. Here they are bouncing back and heading over to the World Cup in 2026. This is going to be Ghana's 5th appearance at the World Cup, having been there in 2006, in 2010 in South Africa, in 2014, in 2022 in Qatar, and of course in 2026. So of all the 5 editions of the World Cup that they've played in, you have to go back to the 2010 edition that was in South Africa, where of course, Asamoah Gyan was headliner, almost sent the Black Stars of Ghana to the semi-finals of the World Cup, but unfortunately was unable to score that penalty against Uruguay. Yeah, that would have sent Ghana to the semi-finals. Uruguay going on to win that game and eliminate the Black Stars of Ghana. And ever since then, Asamoah Gyan's life has never been the same. But you have to look at the qualification campaign. You look at people like Jordan Ayew, the captain of the Black Stars. He's put up such a solid performance. He's one of the top performers in the qualifiers. 7 goals, 7 assists. And you look at other players, Mohamed Kudus, who's been very pivotal for them. You want to think the Black Stars of Ghana have finally given their fans a smile on their faces. And of course, we know that not qualifying for the AFCON 2025, this World Cup qualification has given them some breathing space. And I'm pretty sure that the Black Stars will show up in the 3 nations in 2026 with one mission: to perform extremely, extremely well. Now, like you all know, guys, the World Cup qualification campaign takes 9 automatic qualified teams from the African continent. There is an opportunity for Africa to have a 10th team, but that team will first of all go through a playoff. So the second best placed teams that have qualified for a playoff are Nigeria, Cameroon, DR Congo, and Gabon. Of course, they're going to compete in a playoff. The champion of that playoff will then face another nation from another continent and then see how far that will go. So the World Cup 2026, which is going to be the 23rd edition, is going to be as exciting and really, really, really revealing, with 48 teams battling it out in 3 different nations for the first time ever. So here's been a breakdown of the 9 African nations that have qualified for the World Cup. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown and the exclusive stories. Like again, I keep saying, please subscribe. And yeah, much love. Thank you for the feedback. Keep it pitchside as always. Cheers.